Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Advice Show with Alec Pecano on Friday, May 3rd. On today's show, we will go over pitchers to stream, pitchers not to stream, hitters to stream, waiver wire, and preview week 7 of fantasy baseball. Let's get started. Here are my pitchers to stream for this week for fantasy baseball. This weekend for fantasy baseball. First, we've got Joe Boyle starting Sunday versus the Marlins. And as you see, I do have two Oakland Athletics pitchers on here. And the first one, like I said, is Joe Boyle. And I believe him and JP Sears will feast against one of the worst teams in fantasy baseball and in MLB, the Miami Marlins. So if you need pitchers to stream for this weekend, one for today, which would be JP Sears tonight at 9:40, and the other one would be Sunday, Joe Boyle. I would highly advise that you stream both of them. They'll probably get you a win, because I highly doubt the Marlins go into Oakland and take 2 out of 3 or sweep the A's. And then the other two guys to stream, one of them is Pirates' Jared Jones. He goes Saturday against the Rockies at home. I don't know what it is about this matchup, but I want every bit of it. If Jared Jones is on your waiver wire and available, stream him. 100% confidence. And he should be a must start the rest of the year. And then the last guy, Ryan Pepio. He's had 3 straight quality starts for the Rays. And he is also another guy that I'm going to put in that must-start category. Every 5th day he goes out there to pitch, he is a must-start pitcher for the Rays. No questions. Must start. Now we're going to get to the other end of the spectrum, and that's pitchers to not stream this weekend. The first one being Chris Paddack tonight versus the Red Sox. This is at home for the Twins tonight, but I don't trust Paddack against this Red Sox lineup. I know it's kind of depleted without Trevor Story, without a couple other guys, without Trevor Story and Tristan Cassis, but I don't want any part of Chris Paddack tonight at all. And same goes for Joe Ross. He faces the Cubs today at 2:20. Unless you're desperate and you need, and there's no other good options on the waiver wire, I would stay as far away from Chris Paddack and Joe Ross as possible. Michael Wacha. Do not stream Michael Wacha this weekend. He faces the Rangers, and that's a high-powered lineup. He faces the Rangers tomorrow night. I would not go anywhere near Michael Wacha. Absolutely not. Do not stream Michael Wacha. And the last one is Tobias Myers against the Cubs in Wrigley tomorrow. I would do anything I can to steer clear of Tobias Myers tomorrow against the Cubs. Do not stream Tobias Myers. Do not. My waiver wire part 1 pitchers under 80% rostered. And the first one is Bryce Elder of the Braves, 12.7% rostered. If you need starting pitching help, I highly advise that you add Bryce Elder. He's going to stick around in that rotation for the rest of the year for the Braves. If any of these guys, if they're available on your waiver wire, I would add them. The only one I would be a little hesitant in adding is Jose Soriano of the Angels, because he does pitch in Angel Stadium, which traditionally has been a pitcher's ballpark. But this year we've seen the home runs uptick in Angel Stadium, and I would be a little wary of that. But other than that, the other three guys on this list, Elder, Woods Richardson, and Waldron, absolutely go out and stream them. And add them and stash them on your bench. We get to the waiver wire hitters part 2. Weekend waiver wire part 2, hitters to stream. First one is Dodgers outfielder Andy Pages. 3 games versus the Braves. Now, the pitching matchups are not, they're enticing to a certain extent, but he is 14.1% rostered. If you need outfield help, because you have Randy Arozarena, who's been just slumping badly, I would consider the idea of adding Andy Pages and putting, I know this is going to sound wild, putting Arozarena on your bench until he breaks out of this slump that he's in. Yes, I said it. Bench Randy Arozarena. Number 2 is Cubs outfielder Pete Crow Armstrong. 3 games versus the Brewers, which starts in a matter of 2 hours. Game 1 of that series starts at 2:20. And Pete Crow Armstrong is 6.3% rostered. I would highly consider adding Pete Crow Armstrong. He has been raking since his promotion from AAA, and he's been seeing a lot more playing time than his fellow outfield mate, Alexander Canario. Now, for those of you that need catcher, I've got a catcher for you. He's 0.4% rostered. He's got 3 games versus the Mets this weekend. Rays catcher Ben Workvid. I know they're going to be him and Rene Pinto are going to be at a timeshare, but if you look at the averages, Workvid is hitting a lot better than Pinto is. And Workvid's only 0.4% rostered. And then the last guy I'm going to talk about on the hitters to stream is Mark Vientos of the Mets. He's got 3 games at Tampa Bay this weekend. 0.3% rostered. He's probably going to DH again. He might be in the lineup tonight for the Mets. And by the way, in a little bit, I will tell you what the stream is tonight, unless you've already looked. But I would I would feel fine streaming Mark Vientos. Waiver wire part 2, hitters under 80% rostered. And the first one is the guy in the thumbnail, and that's Wilyer Abreu of the Red Sox. 21.1% rostered. When Abreu started getting playing time, I was a little skeptical whether he would get full on. He has been in the lineup basically almost on a daily basis. He's on a 6 or 7 game RBI streak last time I checked. And I would feel confident adding him and even starting him in 5 outfielder leagues. Like I said earlier, if you have a Randy Arozarena or a struggling outfielder, you pick up Abreu or Pages, Andy Pages or Wilyer Abreu, and you could start them over that struggling outfielder till that struggling outfielder turns it around and starts hitting again. Number 2 is Jordan Beck, prospect that got called up before their game Tuesday for the Rockies. 4%. It seems like Jordan Beck is going to get an immense amount of playing time here. And that's what you need in fantasy baseball. He's another guy. If you have a struggling outfielder and you don't want to keep starting that struggling outfielder, aka Randy Arozarena, I would pick up Jordan Beck or the next guy I'm going to talk about here in a second, and put them in your lineup until that struggling outfielder starts to hit again. In the last outfielder I'm going to talk about here is Jacob Young of the Nationals. 13.2%. If you need stolen bases, Jacob Young seems to be the guy for you. And again, like I said about Abreu, Beck, and Pahis, if you have a struggling outfielder, for example, Randy Arozarena, who's hitting well under 200, and you don't feel like continuing to almost pull your hair out because can't get hits, can't drive in runs, I would add Jacob Young and start him until that Randy Arozarena or whoever that struggling outfielder is that you have turns it around and fixes their issues. And the last one, this is deep leagues. It is Rays first baseman, rookie Austin Shinton, 0.4% rostered. Austin Shinton, I talked about him on the podcast, on the show a couple days ago, I think, if I remember correctly. I said he was going to get more playing time, and it seems like that's going to be the norm until Jonathan Aranda comes back and Joshua Lowe, which, spoiler alert, I will be talking about Josh Lowe in a little bit in the Week 7 preview for Fantasy Baseball. But if you, Austin Shinton's a guy that I would add, but if he's not in the lineup, don't start him. He's an add and see. He's an add / wait and see guy if you do add him. Now we got Fantasy Baseball week number 7. 4 hitters, 4 sleeper hitters. The first one I just talked about a minute ago in the waiver wire. It is Jordan Beck. 4% rostered. Rockies out 6 games, all at home next week, which you got to love that if you're a fantasy baseball fan, because if you know the Rockies, they play at Coors Field, and the altitude there is really high, and that's going to help Beck get launch angle on his when he hits the ball. He's got 3 games against the Giants, 3 games at home, 3 versus the Giants at home, 3 versus the Rangers at home. The next guy is Rays shortstop, Jose Caballero. And I love seeing his roster rate increase. It's gone from under 10% to now 15.7%. He's got 6 games next week, and they're all at home. 3 against the White Sox, 3 against the Yankees. It's growing on me that Caballero could hit. If you need batting average, he is really good with batting average. If you need stolen bases, Caballero is one of the few Rays that is not afraid to run at any time. He will steal bases. And I would add him if you have a struggling shortstop, or if you feel like you just need, if you're playing the waiver wire at shortstop and streaming guys on a daily basis, I would feel comfortable streaming Jose Caballero at shortstop next week. Number 3 on the sleeper hitters for next week is Athletics outfield first baseman / outfielder Tyler Nevin. 5.6% rostered, 7-game week next week, 4 versus the Rangers, 3 at the Mariners. If you haven't heard, Nevin is on a 9-game hitting streak right now. And I like guys that are hot. I like guys that are on hot streaks. And he happens to be on a hot streak right now. And I don't mind streaming him next week for any of those 7 games. And the last hitter to stream is Brewers prospect third baseman that got called up before the series against the Rays, Tyler Black. 3.9% rostered, 7-game week next week, 3 at Kansas City against the Royals, and 4 at home against the Cardinals. Now, Tyler Black can play everywhere. He's kind of that utility guy that every team seems to have now. He can play first base, he can play third base, shortstop, outfield, second base. So he can play pretty much anywhere around the diamond. If you need a corner or middle infielder in a roto league or a points league, head-to-head points league, I would feel comfortable adding Tyler Black, Tyler Nevin, Jose Caballero. And 5 out, the one thing I'm going to circle back around to Jordan Beck for a second. The only leagues I would not add Jordan Beck is 3 or 4 outfielder leagues. 5 outfielder leagues, yes, absolutely. Dynasty leagues, yes, for Tyler Black and Jordan Beck. Dynasty leagues, roto leagues, all these guys are good ads. 2 start pitchers to add for next week. The first one is, I don't know how many times. I've talked about Jose Butto of the Mets so many times. He's got 2 starts next week. The first one comes Monday at the Cardinals. That I would take advantage of that and start him against the Cardinals, because his start next Sunday on Mother's Day is against the Braves at home, and that scares me. That scares me a heck of a lot more than the Cardinals do. My next 2-start pitcher I like next week is Emerson Hancock of the Mariners. He's got 2 starts. He starts Tuesday at the Twins and Sunday at the Athletics. Okay. I like both those matchups, but the one I like the most is the Sunday game at home against Oakland. And then the last 2-start pitcher for next week is Simeon Woods Richardson of the Twins. Goes Monday against the Mariners at home, and then Saturday at Toronto. Now, Toronto's lineup they're good, but I don't know how much truth I put into it right now, because they're missing a couple key guys. So I would feel confident starting Woods Richardson in both those matchups. And IL players to stash for the last part of the show. Number 1, Cody Bradford. My first injured list player to stash is Cody Bradford, starting pitcher of the Texas Rangers, 43.8% rostered. Cody Bradford was on a streak before he got put on the injured list by the Rangers. And I would feel confident stashing him in my IL spot if I have one open, because when he comes back, I think he goes back into the rotation and sticks there. Number 2 is Rays outfielder Josh Lowe, or as I've been hearing him being called recently, Joshua Lowe. 40.9% rostered. Once he comes back from the injured list, he's dealing with some injuries right now, but once he comes back, he will be the everyday, almost, I think he's going to be penciled in the lineup almost every day in right field for the Rays. Number 3 is Brian Bayo of the Red Sox. 30.8% rostered. And he was on a little streak before. He was showing some signs of breaking out before he went on the injured list. And I like that. I think you should, any of these guys, if you have an IL spot open, stash them on your IL, and you can add them to your roster once they come back. And the last one is Frankie Montas of the Reds. 12% rostered. It sounds like he's going to be back on Monday. That's what David Bell said. Next Monday is when Frankie Montas is slated to come back, and he's slated to start at some point for the Reds. And I would feel highly confident in starting Frankie Montas once he comes back off the injured list. We do offer memberships with the Fantasy Baseball show here on Sports Talk Podcast YouTube channel. The cheapest one is 99 cents a month. The most expensive one is $14.99 a month. And tonight at 6:50, there will be a special play-by-play of the Rays and Mets game 1 tonight at 6:50. But for the Fantasy Baseball Advice Show, this is Alec Pecado saying goodbye.